Have you ever wondered who really pulls the strings of the global economy? For decades, the United States was the undisputed champion, the big boss of international trade. But now, a new powerhouse has entered the ring: China. This isn't just a friendly competition. It's a full-blown economic rivalry that's reshaping the world as we know it. So, who's winning, the USA or China? Who truly controls global trade today? The answer is a lot more complex than you might think. Let's break it down. To understand where we are now, we need to look back. After World War II, the United States basically wrote the rulebook for global trade. They led the creation of institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, meaning most international transactions were, and still are, priced in dollars. This gave the US immense power. Think of it like this: if everyone at the international market has to use your special currency to buy and sell, you have a huge advantage. This system, often called the Bretton Woods system, established an era of American economic dominance that lasted for generations. The US was the world's biggest consumer market, its biggest innovator, and its biggest investor. Everyone wanted to trade with America. Then, in 2001, something changed the game completely. China joined the World Trade Organization, the WTO. This was a monumental moment. It was like a new, incredibly talented player joining the league and immediately starting to break records. China's entry into the WTO opened up its massive manufacturing capabilities to the entire world. Suddenly, Made in China was everywhere. The country became the world's factory, producing everything from iPhones to sneakers at incredibly low costs. This led to an unprecedented economic boom. In just a few decades, China lifted hundreds of millions of its citizens out of poverty and transformed itself into an economic superpower. So how does this rivalry play out today? Let's look at the numbers. When it comes to manufacturing and exporting goods, China is the clear leader. In 2023, China was the world's largest exporter of goods, and it's not even close. They ship out massive quantities of electronics, machinery, furniture, and textiles. The US, on the other hand, has transitioned more towards a service-based economy. While it still manufactures a lot, its biggest exports are in high-tech services, intellectual property, finance, and entertainment. Think Hollywood movies, Microsoft software, and Wall Street banking. So you have this dynamic: China is the world's workshop, and the US is the world's office and design studio. But trade isn't just about who ships more boxes. It's also about who your trading partners are. And this is where things get really interesting. If you look at a map of global trade today, you'll see a lot of red. More than 120 countries, including many of America's traditional allies in Europe and Asia, now count China as their largest trading partner. The US is the top partner for about 60 countries. It means that for a majority of the world, their economic health is more directly tied to China's economy than to America's. This gives Beijing incredible leverage on the world stage. A key part of China's strategy to expand its influence is the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. You've probably heard of it. Launched in 2013, it's one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in history. China is funding and building roads, railways, ports, and power plants across Asia, Africa, Europe, and even Latin America. The idea is to create a modern-day Silk Road, connecting China to the rest of the world and making trade faster and easier. Critics in the West, particularly in the US, see the BRI as a form of debt trap diplomacy. They argue that China lends money to developing countries for these projects, and when the countries can't pay it back, China gains control of strategic assets like a port. Supporters, however, say the BRI provides much-needed infrastructure that Western institutions have been slow to fund, boosting economic growth in developing nations. Regardless of your view, there's no denying its impact. The BRI is physically rewiring global trade routes to center around China. The US isn't just sitting back and watching this happen, of course. It has its own strategies. One of the biggest tools in the American arsenal is its control over the global financial system. As we mentioned, the US dollar is the king of currencies. When countries trade oil, for example, they usually do it in dollars. This gives the US the power to impose economic sanctions. By cutting off a country's access to the dollar-based financial system, the US can effectively cripple its economy. We've seen this used against countries like Iran and North Korea. This financial power is something China currently can't match. The Chinese yuan is growing in international use, but it's still a very distant second to the dollar. Another major battleground is technology. This is the new frontier of the US-China rivalry. We're talking about things like 5G, artificial intelligence, and semiconductors, the tiny chips that power everything from our phones to our cars. The US has long been the global leader in tech innovation, with Silicon Valley giants like Apple, Google, and Amazon dominating the industry. But China is catching up and fast. Companies like Huawei, a leader in 5G technology, and ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, have become global household names. This has led to what many call a tech war. The US has put restrictions on companies like Huawei, citing national security concerns, and is trying to boost its own domestic semiconductor production to reduce reliance on Asia. The race to control the next generation of technology is intense because whoever wins will likely set the standards and control the infrastructure for the 21st century economy. So, where does this leave us? Who is actually in control? The truth is, it's not a simple answer. It's not like one country is the CEO and the other is an intern. Instead, we are moving from a world dominated by one superpower, the US, to a world with two. It's a bipolar economic order. The US still holds immense power through its financial system, its technological leadership, and its strong network of allies. American consumer demand still drives a huge portion of the global economy. If Americans stop buying, the world feels it. However, China's manufacturing might. Its role as the top trading partner for most of the world, and its ambitious infrastructure projects mean that its influence is undeniable and growing. China has become indispensable to global supply chain. This interdependence means that a complete decoupling of the two economies, which some politicians talk about, is incredibly difficult, if not impossible. They are like two dancers tied together. Even if they don't like each other, they have to coordinate their movements, or they both fall down. So who controls global trade? The answer is, they both do in different ways. The US controls the financial and high-tech architecture, while China controls the physical production and logistics. It's a delicate and often tense balance of power. This rivalry will be the defining geopolitical story of our time, and its outcome will shape the prices we pay, the products we can buy, and the very structure of our globalized world. What do you think the future holds? Will one side eventually pull ahead, or will they be locked in this economic dance for decades to come? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. See you in the next video.